Hi, this is Jeff Kober, and we welcome you to Disney Insights. Now that the dust has somewhat settled, and though I have already done some detailed announcements around Piston Peak, Imagination, Tomorrowland, and Villains Land, there are so many other details from my experience at Disneyland and at the D23 expo that I haven't really unpacked, especially here on this podcast. It's taken me so many days to get my head around everything that took place. This podcast is my effort to summarize all of that to better get a sense of the whole of D23, not just park announcements, which I have a lot to cover, but the event itself, from D23 day at Disneyland to the Exposition floor to the Honda Center events at night. It was an incredible but intense and intimate experience shared with some other 100,000 people. Join me as we look at insights on D23 and the promises ahead for Disney parks. This podcast is produced by myself and Performance Journeys, which offers training, development, and consultant support to organizations big and small and entrepreneurs new and established, with a wide variety of resources and long-time in-the-trench experience. Hey, we're going to offer workshops for you, online learning, coaching, and so much more to key organizations that want to build their teams, raise organizational excellence, improve leadership, and create customer loyalty. If you need a keynote speaker, if you need someone to help your organization, check me out at performancejourneys.com. As with our podcast, be sure to check out our website, disneyinsights.com, where we offer key points, photos, videos, links, and more. In today's discussion, we'll refer to several videos found on Disney Insights YouTube page. So please subscribe to both, to our Disney Insights YouTube page, our website, and all of our social media. Because it's all going to be part of our strategy moving forward. And with all of these things, we appreciate any positive ratings, reviews, or referrals that you can make to others. Thanks for being a part, and thanks for joining us. So as a background to my experience, know that I've actually been to 5 D23 events since it began. In fact, I attended the original one. So I've even done signing events for the Annette Funicello Foundation. I've really had the experience of being at D23 and experiencing it. Now, I didn't go in the last previous D23 event. I had hoped to. I had gone online to try to make a reservation. Whatever I did wrong or didn't do right, I didn't end up with a reservation for the experience. And in some ways, I wasn't so frustrated about that, because that event last time was the first time that they had decided that they were going to do a separate evening event to really focus on park announcements or new films coming up or the Disney Legends ceremony. So I really rejected that idea that I was already paying to go to the expo, and then I was paying in addition to that. I thought that was kind of So I wasn't that bothered that I didn't go, although that was a big one. It obviously made a ton of announcements, and so I felt missing out. But I decided I would do it this year. It coincided with a work trip that I had to do out west, so I kind of engineered that so I could do the first 2 days out in Washington and then come on down to Los Angeles. And that worked out really well for me. I got there late Tuesday night, stayed at the Sheraton Garden Grove, which surprised me as it was a far better hotel than I thought it to be. And I should hit myself for that, because actually I had done work with not only Sheraton, but all of what was the Starwood brand back in the day. Actually re-engineering their brand and really kind of focusing on their customer experience and what that looked like and so forth. And that was a massive operation I did in my early days of consulting. But So I do have a little place in my heart for Sheraton. I chose to take that one. It's under the Marriott brand now, and it did not disappoint. The concierge level service was good. The housekeeping was great. The room was great. It was really a nice way to. It was a great place to come back to at the end of crazy days, crazy long days, where you were really having to walk and do all this stuff, and it did not disappoint in that regard. So I felt like I was set up for this. I decided to make Wednesday and Thursday opportunities to get into both Disneyland and Disney California Adventure. I wanted to get a number of photos and videos to amplify my Disneyland insights, inspiration, ideas, and magic for you and your organization, the online tool, which you could see promoted on our website. I also am planning on a new one for fans that kind of goes into an amazing amount of details and Easter eggs and all the kind of crazy stuff you find in Disneyland when you go visit it. And so this kind of helped do that. And I was very structured in how I went. I mean, I had like a list of 200 things I wanted to either video or take a picture of. So it was kind of crazy, but I was kind of focused on getting that and doing that. And I think it's because I had that focus that I ended up doing things I usually don't do. For instance, the first morning I went to Guardians Mission Breakout, which is in the former Tower of Terror building in Avengers Campus, was in Hollywoodland. At any rate, I've been on the ride a few times, but honestly, if you don't go on the very first thing in the morning, you are in a very long queue unless you are taking out lightning lanes and so forth. And honestly, I didn't need to take out lightning lanes for anything over the next couple of days, which suggests a little bit that attendance was down, but also suggested that you can figure it out. But at any rate, I remember how delightful that attraction is. It's no longer a Tower of Terror. It is its own beast in a building similar to what it looks like for a Tower of Terror, but it is its own beast, and it was so fun and absolutely had a blast doing that. In the process of crossing through Avengers Campus, ran into Shang-Chi and Ant-Man, and together, all three of us grabbed a photo. That was so much fun. And they were just great in terms of banter back and forth and so forth. Then I headed over into Pixar Pier. I had done Toy Story, but if I'm going to do Toy Story, I might as well do it Magic Kingdom because I didn't think it was a big difference between the two. And I was surprised how little queue. Actually, most of the queue that you see outside is the queue. It is the queue for the attraction. Mr. Potato Head is outside. So there wasn't a lot of difference in the attraction when I went inside. Exit, there's a little homage to kind of the backstory of how you get Toy Story and Pixar Pier kind of area. But at any rate, I took all that in, took in Jesse's Critter Carousel. Now, I usually just take photos or video from as it spins around. I actually got on it and enjoyed just spinning around on it. Again, this was indicative of the kinds of things I ended up doing that were just fun, that I don't usually make time to do or bother doing. Crossed back over into San Francisco and ended up finding a kind of an ideal moment to get into the first queue of the day for Baymax and Hiro Omara. And I gotta tell you, that was so much fun. I just absolutely enjoyed the banter that I had. Actually, I say Hiro Omara, but it was only Baymax that I had. In a previous experience, I've seen him appear, but he wasn't there that day. Then I headed over to lunch at Lamplight Lounge, which was just very decompressing and just nice to in the craziness of midday, just being able to relax and take that in was just the right timing for that. Little disappointed. I was a little disappointed by food in many places. This place, I had a hamburger. It was fine. But honestly, the menu is too limited for such a nice facility like that. And I know they call it a lounge, but really it's not a lounge like you're going to find with Pirates of the Caribbean over here. I just thought it really could have a bigger menu. And then afterwards, I headed toward Grizzly River Rapids. I wanted to grab a video of that again for the series that we're doing on California Adventure this year and its anniversary. And again, it's been probably about 7 years since I've done Grizzly River Rapids, and I've done it a few times, and I gotta tell you, it was just a hoot. It was so much fun. It didn't get that wet. Most people didn't get that wet, but man, I had a great time. Oh, and by the way, there was a single rider line for that. So helpful. And it did not, I mean, the line was like 70, 80 minutes long, and I was able to get on it in about 10 to 15. It was great. And let me tell you, even though I kind of miss not having a lot of thematic details like animatronics or props or things like that, the scenery and the setup and the fact that you're going around Grizzly Mountain and the 2 drops are just fantastic. I just had a great time doing Grizzly River Rapids. That first day was so much fun. Headed over to Disneyland in the evening, and then the next day came back to Disneyland for D23 day. Now, there weren't a lot of things associated with D23, but it was a real nice, you stepped in and everybody, didn't matter if you were with D23 or not, everybody got a hat for D23, colorful little hat. That made that kind of just stepping off really fun. Did a number of things that I wanted to take video of and so forth. Although I did take time, my first attraction was Alice in Wonderland, which is my favorite. Probably one of my favorite, no, not probably, it is one of my very favorite attractions, and I love it so much, and so I had to do that first off. By the way, see so many social media influencers coming and going and all of this. Kind of crazy to see all this taking place. I decided to have lunch it's a little counter service place that's kind of attached to Pirates of the Caribbean, and kind of a terrace little place, and they have been offering Monte Cristo sandwiches. Now, I'm very familiar with Monte Cristo from having it at Blue Bayou, and I believe they still serve it, but this was a lot more affordable, I'm happy to say. It was, I thought this was really good. I didn't have to commit to a lot. I just line up and get the sandwich and go my way. It was probably one of the worst sandwiches, dishes I've ever had at Disneyland. The whole thing was just bread and very little of the ham and cheese kind of filling that you're supposed to have in between. There's usually raspberry preserves. The best you got was little packets of strawberry jelly. It was totally on the side of disappointment. And by the way, no place to really eat. I did that, but it was so disappointing. I also usually do the whole churro thing, and I found a churro with kind of an apple pie topping. It was okay, but honestly, there was nothing with churros that really impressed me. But what did impress me was I headed over to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It has had these additions. And the first thing I noticed this the night before when I walked in, and I wasn't even thinking to look for it, but it just struck me so much. I stopped in my tracks when I heard it, but you hear the sounds of Star Wars. You hear the John Williams music as you enter, and it is so inspiring. And it really does make it feel a lot more like Star Wars. Added to that, when I came back the next day, here was Luke, Leia, R2-D2. They were so cool. The banter and the interaction with Luke, I felt like I was really brought back into the film. It really made the difference. And then R2-D2 was like bothered by one of the tourists who looked like he might have belonged to the dark side or something. I don't know, but it was so fun to see that little play off with R2-D2. And then they also had the BDX droids. If you've seen images of those, the three little guys kind of walking around and so forth. They were in a dedicated space. Very cool. That was a lot of fun. Big queue. Most of the crowd, there was a lot of people in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but where they were is they were lined up on day one to get a new Batu Adventure Buddy Ewok. And it is this little interactive Ewok that you get, and there were lines that went all over that land, people wanting to get this Ewok. Apparently, it's available at the Galaxy's Edge at Disney's Hollywood Studios, but I didn't see no lines for it when I was there the other day. But it was definitely a hit right there, and a lot of people lined up. I will say the other thing that I had an opportunity to do was they had last year when I was there, they had added the Walt Disney Experience in the Opera House on Main Street. Now they've since then added back in Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and they alternate. Lincoln goes on till about 1 o'clock. That's you have to get there in the morning, which is kind of not what you want to do first thing, but yeah, by 1 you got to go see that, and then it switches over to Walt the rest of the day. Well, I got in there, and still a wonderful experience. There's still the skies kind of become like a flag at the end. There's no Capitol building in the background, but they had the portion in the front which introduced his life and so forth with images done by some of the Disney artists. And it really the funny thing that stood out, and I was halfway back in the crowd, but the funny thing that stood out as I watched this is that because they've now got this turntable, everything's to turn back and forth between Walton and Lincoln. He now it's kind of a pedestal, and he now stands a lot taller. I mean, Lincoln was already tall to begin with, but now he stands even taller, and it has a kind of a funky effect that way. But notwithstanding, was glad to have had that experience. Going back to D23, I will tell you that the highlight of the D23 day at Disneyland was a small little parade, that cavalcade almost, that came through, and with Mickey and a lot of the Disney characters. But they had Disney legends that were being honored that week. They had former Disney legends. They even had previous members of the family. By the way, the D23 day highlights is a video on my YouTube page. So please, if you haven't checked that out, go and check that out. It's really fun because the last part of it, and let me just tell you a little bit about the last part of it, is there, while we were waiting, and we were waiting toward the end, it was a long wait toward City Hall. And there was this father-son next to me, and the son happened to be wearing a Merlin shirt. And I'm thinking, okay, when I saw the Merlin shirt, I thought this is a dad choice, because I don't think any kid would have gravitated and said, I want a Merlin shirt. You know, it's not like you're going to see one in the store, right? So this little boy had a Merlin shirt on, but they were all lined up ready to see it, and the boy was impatient. He didn't even know what he was really looking toward. And of course, Disney legends aren't going to necessarily be anything big for the kid. But at the end of this whole parade, who should come along but Merlin? And Merlin immediately saw this boy who was kind of tucked away in the crowd. You'll see it on the video. He came right up and made a big to-do with this little boy. It was so... I think it was once for dad, or once for the kid, twice for dad, but it was a wonderful moment. They had Merlin and other characters out there. Blue Fairy was out there in not only in that procession parade, but also just doing meet and greets because of D23. It was a lot of fun. And then the last thing, I need to add this to my page, but you got to check this out. The last thing, I got this idea from the Zenola, and Zenola Travel is where you want to go because Dave and Leah know how to book these kinds of things. So you want to check them out. But they gave me this idea because they had done this already. I had taken photos on the exterior of the men's and women restroom signs that are found throughout Disneyland. And I've created kind of a montage. Now, we just redid our one of our bathrooms, and I have created this as a montage little picture. It's such a clever thing to add to your bathroom of all things. And so check out, I put a photo of that image on the page for you to take a look at. At any rate, that was the highlights of my time at Disneyland, and I'm so glad. I was tired both of those days, exhausted, and now I'm going into D23, only to be further exhausted by all of it. So the D23 Expo, I am not a foreigner to this. I've done this many times, and I knew that the traffic coming into this was going to be crazy. So since I'd had some big Disneyland days, I took the time that morning to get out some footage from Disneyland D23 day out on the YouTube page. And then I came in around 10:30, and honestly, I didn't wait more than 10 or 15 minutes to be able to walk into the expo. That worked out beautifully. It was a little more problematic. I went a little earlier the next day, and it was a longer wait, but not because more traffic had to move through. They were doing some video work or something and trying to take pictures of the crowd, and I think they held them back for that. So when it was supposed to open at 9, it ended up being closer to 9:20 by the time it opened. So that was a little painful. In that crowd, though, I got to talk to some of the folks who wear costumes. And but everybody does cosplay, not everybody, but so many people do cosplay and wear costumes to the D23 Expo, but some really do costumes. And I was between three people. One, Ariel joined us, the Little Mermaid joined us, but this one woman was dressed as Coke Corner, for lack of a better term. Her hat was a Coca-Cola Tiffany style lampshade, and then she wore a dress that was very very appropriate to the Coke Corner kind of aesthetic, and it was very clever. And she even handed me her, I wouldn't say business card, but she does costumes, and it was a little Coke tab, the Coke bottle top. It was the Coca-Cola bottle top, and in it had a code that you could go in and actually see her size. Very clever. The individual in front of us was a woman I think it was a woman, because I don't think I ever really had much of a conversation with her. She was kind of cloaked inside this entire wardrobe that featured the animals from Sleeping Beauty, the owl and the squirrels, all trying to hold up the prince's outfit. And so she was dressed like the prince, as made up by the animals in the forest. It was so beyond clever, so trippy, so crazy. And I ended up talking to the Coke Corner and the aerial individual. The aerial individual had done this incredible beadwork. Turns out that you have to actually apply to be in their masquerade competition for the best costume. You have to apply months and months in advance, and then you apparently have to keep them updated with photos about how your costume's coming along and so forth. This isn't just show up and be in the thing. It was really surprising how much effort and how involved this whole thing was. But man, it really makes the whole event so crazy and fun. And enjoyed talking to them. I enjoyed several of the things. I have to be honest, I don't do the store thing anymore. And in fact, while I probably would have done a reservation for a couple of those stores, you have to do it virtually at 6 a.m. And I was up at 6 a.m. because, hey, I'm on Eastern time, right? I just forgot to do it and really didn't want to do it. And even then, it still seems like a wait. And there was a lot of waiting in stores and places like that. That's the turnoff for me. It's not me. And I don't care for that. I also missed the deadline back in July to actually get into some of the exposition or some of the forums that were being held during the day upstairs. Missed that entirely. I probably could have gone standby on those, but honestly, it was all I could do to take in the floor. and get what I really wanted out of it. I enjoyed the archives experience. It had Vincent from the Black Hole. It had the actual Ark of the Covenant from Indiana Jones. It had the Mary Poppins carpet bag, which, if you've heard the story on D23, was actually given away when the movie was being promoted as part of a sweepstakes, and was found decades later, or retrieved decades later, and is now held by the archives. But it went kind of missing, or to this winner, for many, many years. It was very kind of an interesting story you can hear on D23. Two of my favorite highlights were I ran into this Lego of Pirates of the Caribbean, the attraction at Disneyland, the longer attraction. It was this full multi-level experience of Pirates of the Caribbean in Lego form, from the front and the entrance all the way to the caverns, to the fire scene, the ship scene, all of it. It was so above and beyond. And then there was also a model of the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad, the little train that Disney had built in his backyard. I had no idea how much track it had been for that train. I knew that it ran through the back, but it also ran around the front and every place in between. It was around Walt Disney's Holmby Hills home. Very impressive model that had been created for the Walt Disney Museum, and just to see it out there, it was just those were a real treat. But I have to say, on day one of the D23 Expo, I spent the better part of 4 hours in just the Imagineering Pavilion, which was titled "There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow." And in it, there were, well, I'll cover some of those things, and some of those things were added onto in the discussion at the Honda Center, and I keep wanting to say Honda Center. And the first thing I did, well, actually, I spent over an hour on this alone, was filming from every angle Piston Peak, and this new attraction that we have torn Rivers of America out in Tom Sawyer Island. What is really going to happen in this space? We've seen some pictures. We've seen a fairly good layout, but then it was a cartoon layout. At any rate, this was a complete layout to include the new second ride, Miss Fritter's Daredevil Spin Along. The title of the major ride is Cars Ridge Run Rally. You see the track. It's a different track than Test Track or Radiator Springs Racers. It is not a slot car thing. It is an elevated piece down the center, and you are not racing on this thing. You are going up and down terrain and so forth. In fact, there's a whole thing about how they made the cars. They're designing the cars to look like they've been through mud and everything by the way you see them on the exterior, which means you're not really going to go through mud. You might get a little bit of water, but you're not going to get mud on, because nobody's going to be happy to go on a ride and get mud on them. But at any rate, you see this layout that is just, I got to tell you, it is an impressive model of artwork that they have pulled off. And I did the best I could to do a major video on that. If you have not seen that on my YouTube page, you may have heard it on, I did the audio on the on the podcast, but if you really want to see what this thing looks like, it just really is a stunning piece of work. And what they have planned and what it looks like, the addition of, it reminded me so much of several attractions that have been built before, one of which goes way back to Bear Country at Disneyland back in 1972, which coincidentally had a sign at the entrance to it, because they kind of treated it like you were entering a national park. And the sign was signed by J. Audubon Woodlore, the park ranger that deals with Humphrey Bear and Donald Duck. He is now a Disney Cars character in this attraction, Jay Autobahn Woodlore. And he is a character in this experience. And it is very, the whole thing is, it looks a little bit like Grizzly Peak as well. Very green, snow-topped mountains, water coming down in cascades, similar to Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland, which kind of reminds me a little of that as well. I will tell you, we're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 key attractions coming to Walt Disney World here, but I have to do a much bigger dig on all of them. There's so many details. So you'll be seeing those come out in the weeks to come. But I literally spent over an hour just filming this model and going from one point to another. It is really an impressive experience. Then there was Villains Land, which we got a lot more information on at the Honda Center than we did in the and I have a video that deals with this, as well as with the new Tomorrowland coming to Disneyland and the announcement of the return of Dreamfinder and Figment and a new attraction there. So I have all of that in a video already that you want to check out. There is a storyline that deals with a broken wishing well. There's an announcement of a Maleficent coaster. There is the Mirror Realm dark ride that begins in the Wicked Queen's catacombs from Snow White. This is going to be the second one that's kind of basing itself in a location from Snow White, as well as, of course, the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train over in Fantasyland, in a sort of thing that's a boat, but maybe not a boat. And I'll have to go into detail more on that, but you already hear a lot of details when you see the video that I have on YouTube. There was several models on display for Tropical Americas, and that's all impressive, although there's already a model at One Man's Dream. But and this is where it got really tricky. We got a couple of announcements. First of all, the Encanto ride is called Antonio's Fiesta de Encanto. That'll be short cut to Encanto. The El Carrusel de los Animalitos, we'll probably shortcutting that to the Animalitos carousel. And then Indiana Jones and the Myth of the Jade Serpent. Indy's likeness is in this attraction, and this Jade Serpent is woefully larger than life. It may make the Yeti look a little small. It's massive. The carousel with the Los Animalitos has 21 different Disney characters. We saw some of the characters in the thing. In fact, there are apparently some 40 characters in the Encanto attraction. And we saw the ride vehicles with those. Very impressive. There's a photo I have of the ride vehicles going upstairs. But if you've been on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, you feel like you're kind of going over the falls. This apparently is something similar that's going to happen. You really don't go up a staircase, but you look and feel like you're going up a staircase. At any rate, you can check out the picture on DisneyInsights.com, but all of that is happening. And let me just say this, and it ties to Monstropolis. Monstropolis, they noted was coming in 2027. Didn't say when, but you can count on it being toward the end of the year, right? And it's going to be just that portion that was formerly the Monster or the Muppet Vision Theater in that surrounding area. The whole roller coaster thing, that's coming later. But the Monstropolis thing is coming 27. The Tropical Americas thing, they did not announce any opening date at the event. However, if you go to the website and you look at the photos that are shown for Tropical Americas, there are 3 of them, and they all show opening 2027 on the Disney Parks blog. I've predicted that something would open here. It's a question of what will open. Minimally, the carousel and the surrounding area, the food and beverage, the the retail sections, the the pedestrian space is going to open in 27. Antonio's is making, and the Encanto ride is making a lot of progress, but it's had to go from the ground up. And it's got a ride vehicle that is a little different than what they've used before. It's unique too. And so is it going to be able to make opening? Not sure. Indiana Jones is based on the ride track system. It shouldn't take so long, but they waited until January this year to close out the old dinosaur attraction so that they would have more reason for guests to come. And is it going to take more time than they think to get that in? I think Indy will be ready I think it'll be ready by late fall of next year. There should not be a reason for that to happen. Well, Antonio's, I think they didn't mention anything about it other than coming soon. I don't think they mentioned because they just don't know how soon they're going to open and what things look like in terms of a deadline. So that's what's happening. Going back to Monstropolis, they did make some other announcements. The biggest of these was what was coming into the former Muppet Vision Theater, which is now the Glob Theater. The show is called Welcome to Monstropolis, and it includes a song by the same name that's been created by Randy Newman. There are animatronics. Other social media influencers have seen these in previous visits. There is also part of it that's green because they allude to it being like an ABBA concert that went around the globe and how they had used kind of a screen to show ABBA, but it looked very real. We see from the vision, from the picture depicted, we see that what was the former box seats have now been turned into a projection of what's going on the stage. So you kind of think the stage must be live. We do know that the drummer was an animatronic, and that you see in the foreground a cameraman who's way in the back. Those apparently are both animatronics. We don't know that there are any animatronics on the stage or if that's all projection. We do see a canister flying out into the crowd, and that screams 3D. So more to come. Definitely some screen element. Definitely some animatronics. We don't know how much of either. The proscenium looks completely different than what it did for Muppets. It's looking crazy. If you remember, there was no stage in the Monsters, or in the Muppet Show, but there was a orchestra pit, and there is space down below that orchestra pit because penguins went to and from below, and then there was smoke that came up, and there was grates for the smoke downstairs. So it's possible to have animatronics kind of show up in the same way you have animatronics kind of pop up for the Country Bear Jamboree. It's possible, but nobody's told us that. They have said that well, of course, we have the one restaurant coming that we were all expecting, the sushi restaurant, but the pizza restaurant, the Pizza Rizzo, formerly Toy Story Pizza Planet, is going to be Archie's Scare Pig Pizza. That does not sound like a great title, but they say that both Monsters University and their competitor university both really love this pizza. And there is a Monsters University Alumni Club, which sounds like it's going into the space where they had kind of a wedding feast set apart in the old Pizza Rizzo. There is also a retail space, Scarporium, coming into play. That's being built in somewhere to the experience. So we've gotten some new titles added to that, and they have said it's coming in 2027. Doesn't say when, and it certainly won't include the roller coaster. Roller coaster has been topped out, from what I can tell, in terms of the construction when I saw it the other day, but still a lot more to come on that. I'm going to just also mention that there was the Carousel of Progress had some additional depictions of the Halloween scene, which is scene 2. Scene 1 is the rocket scene. Actually, I think there is a scene of Dad in a chair during the scene 1, And then you have this depiction, which I show on DisneyInsights.com, of Scene 2. Then there's a further depiction of the Scene 4 and Scene 4 costumes, a model of it. And then they announced that Jamie Lee Curtis and Bryan Cranston would be the voice of Mother and Father in the Carousel Progress. I could tell you, Jamie, if you remember when she made Disney Legend, she stood up and said, "I'm the biggest fan," and made everybody sing "It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow." And she loves this attraction, and she's been chosen to be the mother. She's not going to let this thing be a piece of junk. She is going to make sure it's a good, solid work. And so I'm very excited to see what that looks like. And by the way, all 5 of these we're going to go into, again, in the weeks to come in much bigger detail. There are other big announcements that have to be noted. They went into conversations about Infinity Defense and Stark Lab. There was a model of the Stark Lab's seats and of the Infinity Defense vehicle and other things that they showcased. They showcased a statue of Hector going into Santa Cecilia for the Coco ride. It's not going to be De La Cruz as the statue. It's not going to be Hector. It's a period of time following the original Coco film. And they did some promotion around that. That one's at least 2 years away, and definitely Infinity Defense's Stark Lab is at least... Stark Lab might make an appearance, but toward the end of next year, but I don't know that Infinity Defense will. Hong Kong showed this amazing Spider-Man Tower of Terror, but it's not Tower of Terror, but it's like a Tower of Terror model, and what that's going to look like. Tokyo Disneyland had a model of a Space Mountain Earthrise. That's the name of their new attraction, Space Mountain Earthrise, and it's a picture of that entire area and its ride vehicle. They also promoted their Sugar Rush attraction, which is a Wreck-It Ralph attraction going in where they used to have Buzz Lightyear. Paris Adventure Park showcased a Lion King scene and a Tree of Life kind of thing. That's, again, nice bits and pieces, nice little insights, nothing big on any of those really. But we might cover them in more detail later on. I wanted to switch to some things that specifically happened uniquely at the Honda Center. And by the way, the first night I went to was the night you actually do the whole thing around film and television, what's coming, or Disney Plus, and what's coming out and so forth. And I gotta tell you, the Honda Center is huge, thousands of people. I thought I'd get nosebleed from the section I was in or fall to my death or something, but actually it was a really great center altogether. The energy and enthusiasm from Disney fans during that show just was amazing. Neil Patrick Harris hosted the second night, and I gotta say, he did a solid job. He had activities which were fun and silly, but also kind of hit Disney in all the right places. It just was really good. And all this on both nights, the celebrity count. I sat there thinking to myself, whoa, I remember how MGM used to say, it's a studio of 1,000 stars, If you're a star in Hollywood, this was the place to be, at one of these D23 events. They had all sorts of celebrities and stars out for all 3 of these events, and it was impressive, the lineup of people that they had coming to this. I thought, my opening night, the first night I was there, I was about 2/3 of the way through this, and I thought, I would have paid nearly this amount to have gone to a Disney on Ice event in a place like this. And I got to say, I think I got my money's worth out of this. And I really feel like it was worth it. And in fact, it was the surprise highlight for me of the entire D23 experience, was these Honda Center events. I am glad I went on them. I enjoyed them. Of course, on park nights, they're going to share all of the details, and many of which I've just shared, titles and when they're coming and all that kind of thing. But I want to focus particularly on 6 attractions, and they all share something in common. I'll bring it together at the end. Other than Carousel of Progress, which had already been announced. So that was one of the things they talked about. But the other 5 were surprise announcements, no one expected, and they all, including the carousel, share something in common. The first was, hey, we're going to fix that Yeti. And that surprised me because I thought if they could have fixed the Yeti, they should have fixed the Yeti by now. So what are they going to do different is really kind of confusing to me. I've been inside the mountain. I have been up front and close with the Yeti. I've seen the Yeti's fur removed or halfway removed to see the animatronic portion. They say that I've always talked about the Yeti being on a different foundation than the roller coaster, which is on a different foundation than the mountain. They talked about the Yeti being on a 40-foot platform. I heard somebody talk about this. I don't remember going up 40 feet to see the Yeti, and I had to go up from ground zero to get there. So I'm a little confused as to where the Yeti is exactly. I don't remember the Yeti. I remember the Yeti being positioned up high, but it comes right toward the end of the attraction where your coaster is pretty well come to the end of its roll down the hill, so to speak. At any rate, I don't know how they're going to do this, but Yeti was one of the first things that came right out of the gate, and they surprised everybody with this announcement. The second announcement is really toward Disneyland Paris. Disneyland Paris has had a unique space mountain. It's a beautiful space mountain, but it's been themed to Star Wars for the last umpteen years. They made an announcement that they are going to take Space Mountain back to its former glory when it was themed based on the Jules Verne novel From the Earth to the Moon. And there you are shot out of a cannon. The cannon actually cocks back, smoke comes out, and you are shot at high speed into the mountain. It does rolls, and it is all very much themed to this Jules Verne novel. They are going back to that, and they are going to make that change. The fourth thing, if you add Carousel, is a new Tomorrowland for Disneyland. And in fact, people have now said, although I've not seen it officially said, but I think it has been stated that the new Tomorrowland has been pushed ahead of the Avatar expansion. I don't think that's actually what has occurred. I think the Avatar expansion has slowed because they have to do all the changes to the Toy Story bus lot and to guests arriving from the east side, and the new parking lot structure, which they just broke ground on this week. They've got a lot of work that has to be done before the Avatar thing can be completely built. So, and they did say that they feel like this needs to be done in time or in alignment with the big 75th anniversary of Disneyland that is coming up in now 4 years. If you're going to do something in 4 years, you got to hustle on this puppy. And that does mean making it a priority. But I think making it a priority before Avatar is kind of misleading, because Avatar simply can't go faster than what has to be fixed before that occurs. So, but at any rate, the big announcement there was a new Tomorrowland for Disneyland. And I mentioned it again on a video this last week, along with the final announcement, the new Journey into Imagination with Dreamfinder and Figment. That too was announced. Please go see the video because it talks about those two things plus Villains Land. So you got to see that to get all the details from that. I won't cover that here. The final thing that they did cover is that Spaceship Earth would be redone. It had been planned before COVID. I had predicted that they might make a change because they were overdue for making a change. They were going to theme it based on going from communications to storytelling. Now they've said they're going to theme it from communications to connections. And there was this like Moana type moment that was shown in the original artwork that was when they first announced this before COVID, when they canceled it. There was this slightly Disneyfication that was going to go Spaceship Earth. None of that was said here. They just said they're going to, and they're not going to the storytelling thing. So they're not just saying, hey, we're going to go back on track to doing what we said we were going to do. They have said we're going to move to a new theme. The thing that these 6 things have in common: Yeti, Carousel of Progress, Space Mountain, Disneyland Paris, New Tomorrowland for Disneyland, Journey into Imagination, and Spaceship Earth. The 6 things, the one thing all 6 have in common is that they are non-IP attractions, non-intellectual property events. They're not being tied to Moana. They're not being tied to Cars. They're not being tied to Incredibles or to Zootopia or nothing. Not even Mickey. They are their own thing. They are uniquely Imagineering offerings. Now, there is a big group of you out there that really appreciate the non-IP attractions. Haunted Mansion is one of them. Test Track is one of them. American Adventure and the Hall of Presidents and Country Bear Jamboree and the original Pirates of the Caribbean, though that was later made into a movie, and all of these things. It's a small world. All of these are non-IP attractions, and you appreciate them. Disney has said consistently throughout D23 and especially at the expo, look, we're listening to you. We hear you, and we're taking action on things that matter to you. And in this case, all 6 of them are non-IP attractions. Now, the negative, and any of us might say, well, if you really cared about non-IP attractions, you wouldn't have killed off the Rivers of American Tom Sawyer Island. And there's a lot of truth to that. But I will say, when I get into a deeper focus on the Pixar or Piston Peak project, that there's a lot of sense to it, and that this is a balance between non-IP and IP, and that this is going, I think the right things are coming into place. I really do. And altogether, I'm really pleased with the outcomes of this. Thrilled that some of the things which I predicted would probably come, it changed to Journey, it changed to Tomorrowland, it changed to Space Mountain, or to Spaceship Earth. I'm glad those things came and that they are there. So to me, it was a great D23. I came back exhausted. It's taken me a lot of days to kind of get back. I got to mow the yards and all those kind of things. But I am really, and will I do it again? Well, the answer was no when I got on the plane. 10 days later, now it's kind of maybe, but that probably means yes in 2 years. So plan on seeing me at D23. Have some thoughts about how I might do it differently next time, but that's for another podcast. Thank you for joining us in this conversation. Now, I haven't done a lot of promo work, but please, while you're going to look at those photos, would you just check out Disneyland Insights, Inspiration, Ideas, and Magic for you and your organization? This is really a cool thing that I've done, an interactive multimedia experience. I also have links to my books. Go check out my books, because they are really great statements about what really works at Disney and how you can use it in your own organization. So check that out. And of course, hey, if you're looking to do work in your own organization, let me know, because we're here to help. So give me a call. Thanks for joining us for this podcast. Know that, as in the title of my organization, Performance Journeys, it's as much about the journey as it is about performance. So find the second star to the right and keep going straight on till you reach it. Follow the compass of your heart and know that with a smile and a song, a little faith, effort, and pixie dust, your dreams can come true. After all, if we could dream it, we can do it. Until next time, bright suns, we'll see you real soon.